Right, our fearless, youthful attitude that we'll never die. Which brings us to the topic of our talk today. So let's take a few deep breaths to bring ourselves into presence. 3 deep breaths. And with a deep in breath, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. It's a new year, so we're off to a new chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. Do you like this spinning globe?
That's cool.
Originally I had it going, but Janice said it made her feel dizzy. So here we go. The yoga of absolute truth. Absolute truth. Absolute truth. From the Bhagavad Gita, Song of the Lord. Here's our book we use. And now we're going to jump right into a verse. I'm not going to go with the first verse. I'm going to go a little bit in so we can hit the meat of this right away. So the topic is absolute truth. Absolute truth. And I have an exercise planned for us. We can experience that. The sloka goes, if you are thinking of me, the Lord, at the time of physical death, you will leave your body and come directly to me. There is no doubt about it. The discussion of absolute truth starts with a discussion of death. If you are thinking of me at the time of physical death, you will leave your body and come directly to me. There is no doubt about it. According to witnesses, when Mahatma Gandhi was shot, he said, Rama, 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 which is a word for God. So we have to wonder if Mahatma Gandhi went directly to the Lord as he left his body, as it died off. No doubt about it. We'll look at this some more. A person goes to whatever he is thinking or she is thinking at the time of physical death, Arjuna, because his or her mind established that direction. Because his or her mind established that direction. How many of us have given much thought to dying and what our plans are when we are experiencing dying? I don't think it's something in our Western tradition that we spend a lot of time contemplating. And here in this Eastern tradition are some guidelines so that we can be prepared for whenever eventualities arise. A person goes to whatever he or she is thinking at time of physical death. Interesting. Let's go on. Therefore, think of me constantly and fight. What kind of fight is this? It's a fight for what's right, for doing what is right for us. We're listening to our heart, our Christ consciousness. So that's the fight. The fight is to listen to what is right for us in our hearts, when sometimes our heads are yakking away at us and giving us alternate things to think. Think of me constantly and fight. If your heart and mind are given to me, then you will surely come directly to me. The idea here is, if we want to prepare ourselves for our physical death so that we are constantly aware of the divine, it's not good enough just to plan that. We have to put our mind in that consciousness a lot of the time, so that when death does come along, it's just a natural response. It's not something special. We just plan for our death. Make sense? And also, of course, if we think constantly and fight for that experience, the scriptures also tell us we're going to experience some benefits in the here and now, which is the experience of God is the experience of peace. Peace. If we find ourselves agitated and reacting to fears of outcomes, or sadnesses at the way things are, we are not thinking of the divine, are we? So how can we train ourselves so that we experience more and more the divine that is within us? Let's see what Sri Swami Satchidananda recommends here. He always has lots of good advice, right? Questions before we move on?
The me part is the spirituality, the dwelling spirit within that he's referring to.
Yes. It's that which has no name, but since we're talking about it, we give it lots of different names. Right? Lots of different names. But spirit within is a good name for it. Yeah. So here goes. Krishna, who is speaking here in the scripture, has a clever way of doing things, knowing that behind all the different reasoning, which happens in our head, his aim is to make Arjuna face the situation, fight and not run away. So if you remember, the setting for the Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna wants to run away. He doesn't want to face up to what's so. He doesn't like the way the situation is. He doesn't want to go one way. He doesn't want to go the other way. So he wants to lay down his bow and not go on, not fight. Some people think that this metaphor of a war or a fight is inappropriate for a scripture that is leading us to experiencing peace and the divine. We have to look at the struggle, the fight, as a metaphor for our internal struggle, because we all have minds. Our minds are always busy telling us what to think and what to judge and what's right and what's wrong and what we like and what we don't like, especially what we don't like. I don't like this, don't like that. So the struggle is find ways to experience that inner spiritual depth of ourselves so that we are not led into false feelings of fears, angers, and rather able to step back from the way things are and accept things. This doesn't mean that we give our assent to the way things are. It just means that we keep our peace no matter how things show up, so we can step back from our own minds and in that sense not run away. If you read the whole Gita, you keep coming across this hint. Get up and fight. Get up and fight. Keep the struggle going. The underlying purpose is fight your war. Everyone has their own war. I have mine, and you have yours. We are all on the battlefield, metaphorically speaking, constantly fighting to win the game. It's not just a one-time war. Don't think if peace comes somewhere in your perception on the globe, there is peace in your heart. The war is continually going on. If you look at the newspapers, they only point out where there's struggle, physical struggle outside, wars and killings and unhappy people rising up. If they were to point out the millions and billions of people that are leading happy family lives and raising their children and making some money to support their families, no one would read the news. It would be too boring. Be boring. So if peace comes somewhere in the globe, it doesn't mean there is peace in your heart. This war is constantly going on. You have to ask yourself, is that my experience? Am I experiencing this external struggle, or am I just not aware of it? Or am I totally transformed, just full of radiant peace all the time? Satchidananda says, the body and mind are a constant battlefield. Now and then, he, that's Lord Krishna, reminds us, don't give up. Fight with proper understanding, then you can win the war. All right, folks, what is proper understanding? This is chapter 8. He's covered proper understanding in the first 7 chapters. We'll have a review of it. So here's the key, he says, don't give up, fight with proper understanding. So this is an internal struggle that involves our understanding. Then you can win the war. Come to a place where you experience just ongoing peace and serenity. Or as in the Hindu tradition, to be in a state of bliss. Bliss, bliss, all the time. Now, my goodness, how could someone be in a state of bliss when they hear the news about what's going on in the U.S. Senate today? Or over in the Middle East? What happened and what might happen. So there's the struggle. How to head towards a state of peacefulness and bliss, no matter what our minds perceive or are shown is what's going on. Fight with proper understanding, then you can win the war. Here again he says, always keep your heart and mind absorbed in me. That's the challenge. Always keep your heart and mind absorbed in me. And I have a little exercise we can play with for that. Then you will surely come to me. When? At all times. Not just at physical death, but all times, if you keep your heart and mind absorbed in me. It's certain, he says, you will come to me. It's certain. You will come to me. Don't forget what this means. Krishna is not a person. He is an experience. The experience of peace and tranquility. Peace and tranquility. That is God. According to this scripture, what is God? Peace and tranquility. When we experience our total peace and tranquility, we are experiencing God. Experiencing God isn't having some revelation about an old bearded person in a robe who lives up in the clouds. No, it's an experience, an internal experience of peace and tranquility. That we can call God. That's God. That is God. It is peace that is telling you, remember the goal of perfect peace and fight your war. Then you will ultimately be in peace. More recommendations. Fight the war to get in peace. Well, how do we fight that war? How do we come up with a perfect understanding? We can use all kinds of names, forms, and symbols, but we should remember that peace is our God. We can use all the names and forms. Nothing wrong with that, and symbols, as long as we remember that peace is our God. We can't find it without facing life with the proper understanding. We're going to have to review that proper understanding. We had 7 chapters of it, but I think we need a review. I did when I was preparing these. I said, my goodness, what's that proper understanding? So I took a look within myself and came up with an exercise. There's 2 ways you can participate in the exercise. One, you can participate in it, eyes open, and I will read the words of the exercise and ask you to repeat them. You can also do the exercise, eyes open, and I'll repeat the words, and you can repeat after me. Does that work for you?
Sure.
So whatever works for you, and you can go in and out of eyes open, eyes closed, as it works for you. Now, in affirmations like this, the affirmations are not talking to your intellectual mind. So if your intellectual mind quarrels with or takes exception to anything, thank it for sharing with you, and just be open to see how these affirmations land in your heart. So take a look and see. Look at it as an experiment. This is not, although we said we're heading towards absolute truth, for us, maybe we're not there at absolute truth yet. So we'll just experiment with this, okay? Are we ready? Here we go. I long for the proper understanding. Together, I long for the proper understanding. I dedicate everything I do to God. I dedicate everything I do to God. When you speak these affirmations out loud, repeat them a second time silently to yourself. That's how your spiritual self hears them. I offer everything I have to God. I offer everything I have to God. Every thought I think is God's thought. Every thought I think is God's thought. Welcome, you're very welcome. Have a seat. We're doing a little exercise now. You're very welcome. So the exercise is to read what's up there. I will repeat it. We'll all repeat it out loud. And then you can choose to repeat it to yourself silently so that it goes into your heart, so that your heart hears it and your head quiets down. Got it? Here we go. Everything I am, I dedicate to God. Everything I am, I dedicate to God. There's 3 parts. Let's go to part 2. I long for the proper understanding. I long for the proper understanding. So you repeat it silently to yourself. I am not the doer. God is the doer. I am not the doer. God is the doer. Better repeat this silently again. This is a deep one. Repeat it silently to yourself. I am not the doer. God is the doer. I don't have anything. God owns all things. I don't have anything. God owns all things. I do not think thoughts. God thinks all thoughts. I do not think thoughts. God thinks all thoughts. I am not I. God and only God is. I am not I. God and only God is. Another tough one for the intellectual mind to absorb. So we need to address it to our inner spiritual intelligence. Repeat again silently to your inner self. I am not I. God and only God is. Last one. I long for the proper understanding. I long for the proper understanding. And this is a personal understanding. Everyone's understanding is going to be a little different. So as you long for it, look to see what lands as true for you in your heart. Again, I long for the proper understanding. I long for the proper understanding. There is no I, no me, no mine. There is no I, no me, no mine. There is no you, no yours. There is no you, no yours. There is no them, no theirs. There is no them, no theirs. There are no things. There are no things. We have sense experience, but things live in our minds. So your mind won't like this. But in your heart, there are just what you experience as real. Things are words. Words are in the mind. So let's try this again. There are no things. Together? There are no things. There is only God. There is only God. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. That completes the exercise portion. Now, if you're ready, we'll look at some commentary. And before we go into commentary, would you like to comment on the experience of the meditation? Yes.
I don't have per se a comment. I have questions.
The what?
Questions.
Questions, yes, sir.
So if there is no I, who am I? And if there is no you, who are you? And if there is no them, who are they?
So what I hear you saying is your question, if there's no I, who am I? If there's no you, who are you? And if there's no them, who are they? So put that question down in your heart, because that's an intellectual question, isn't it?
That is a very inquisitive question.
Inquisitive. Well, our minds are inquisitive.
Yes.
Our minds are inquisitive.
Concerning this statement.
Right. I got it. So whatever I say is not going to land with you until you put these questions in your heart and see if your heart likes these questions and is comfortable and thinks that they're useful questions. Some say that the answer to a question is bound in the question.
The question.
Yeah, the question. The answer to a question is bound in the question. So you are almost declaring an answer by the nature of your question. By the nature of our questions, we assert an answer. Assert an answer. And questions come from our intellectual understanding. We want to understand things intellectually, which is good. You know, I have a wonderful mind. I'm so grateful for it. It figures out all these computer things. And I get all my gadgets to work most of the time. I have a wonderful mind, and I'm grateful for it. But my mind sometimes just gets in the way of who I really am. And sometimes I just have to say to my mind, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. I know you'd like to know all that, But do you have the patience, good mind that God gave me, do you have the patience to wait until the true questions arise from my heart and the true answers are in my heart? The true questions are not up here, these kind of questions, are in my heart. And the associated answers are right there. Associated answers are right there. Now, I'll give you a little hint for your heart, which comes up for me. We belong to the Unity Church, don't we? Unity, meaning no separation. We're learning about yoga, which is another word for unity, no separation. Well, if there's an I here and a you there, that's separate. See that? If there is an I here and a you there and a them over there, can't trust them, then by the very statement of I am here, you are there, and can't trust them, we have put a cleavage and a separation between ourselves and others, just through the question. The question itself establishes the separation. So we have to look in our hearts for a different question, perhaps, and just address our minds and say, hey, you're doing a good job. That's a great question, but another part of me is going to be patient and look for guidance from my heart. And I suggest that if you look for guidance from your heart, several things might happen. The question might vanish. You might laugh about it and say, that was a funny thing my mind came up with. Or you might get some insight. But all those answers are right inside you.
So I have to do a soul search in order to find the answer.
Perhaps. Or perhaps be patient.
Be patient.
And hold the question
Okay.
in abeyance and saying, look, I got this great question. I know whatever Steve says, I'm going to probably argue with it because that's my nature. So let me just hold this in abeyance. We hold it in abeyance because it is important to me, and ask for guidance and not expect it to show up right away.
Right.
Not expect it to show up right away, but be patient with my mind. And keep asking my heart, is this a good question for me? And is this something? And I'm waiting for guidance. And when you least expect it, your guidance will pop up. Then your job is to recognize it and not let your mind come in and say, oh, no, that doesn't make sense to me. No, you have to be willing to be open to what your heart and spiritual self comes up with so that you can go, aha, and let the mind do its job and have its proper place. And let the heart do its job, your spiritual self, which is to guide you and take you to peace.
Okay. That's good.
That was easy. Good question. I appreciate you bringing that up.
It is interesting when we hear on the screen and read, mine or I, me. I see the distinction between my spiritual self and then looking at, there's that the thought, it's mine, right? The thought, the house, the car, the motorcycle, whatever. And it's interesting how if I just take a step back and look at that, almost like the ego self, it's the yearning of connection and love and unity and deeper meaning and peace that resonates in kind of I like the distance that this commentary provides.
Get some distance. If we look at little babies after they popped out of the womb, what's the first thing they say? Give me some food. I don't like what you... No. They're just in a state of bliss. They haven't learned language yet. I is a word that resides in our language, in our head. We have to learn the word. You, another word, exists in our language, in our head. So babies can teach us what that state of bliss is where there's no separation, because they don't have language yet. Humans have, we're able to learn language. Other animals apparently don't have that capability, but we do. And we use language very effectively to communicate with ourselves and lead prosperous lives. So language is a great tool. However, language is a box all in itself, and when we're in that box of language and we're dealing with something that's not suitable for investigation in the box of language, we have to be able to step back from the box of language, I, you, them, and look at it from a different, perhaps higher perspective.
It's just interesting. You just mentioned something here about how we have to learn language.
Or unlearn it.
Unlearn it compared to animals. Because we have this intellect thing where animals, they communicate via emotions. And, for example, you see a dog, if he sees that you're mad, he will stay back. And if you see that you're happy, he will show that. And an animal, a wild animal, if he sees that you're afraid, he will come to you. Or if you show courage, he will stay back. It's just funny. It's interesting.
So there is communication going on in the animal world.
What I'm trying to say here, I'm sorry to bring it up. What I'm trying to say here is how we communicate from the intellectual level and they from the, where you were sending me just now, to the emotion.
Spirit.
The spirit
level. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was a gorilla called Coco, and a woman brought this. You ever heard of Coco? Mr. Rogers interviewed him one time. And she brought this gorilla up from the time he was a baby gorilla, and she taught the gorilla sign language. And the gorilla could communicate pretty well in sign language. He couldn't utter words like we do, but he could communicate a lot of the concepts. Give me food, and I don't like this, and I love you, via sign language. But it's only human beings, apparently, that have this ability to get words in our heads and have minds that think thoughts, which are words. And we also have the ability to speak with our voices, these words. Okay, anything before we go on here? Thank you for your questions, insights. Thank you. Well, we've got a few more minutes. Here, true faith works wonders. True faith. So this is faith. But don't put a time limit on your faith. I just have faith in you, that's all. You take your time. Even if I am not cured, I shall have faith in you. Don't put a time limit. So that sort of represents what we've been talking about. We can say to ourselves, I just have faith in the divine. That's all. You take your time. Even if I'm not cured or I don't understand yet, I shall have faith in you. I shall keep my faith, even though the circumstances aren't giving me positive feedback right now. If that kind of faith is really there, then you are cured immediately. So when your faith, when your acceptance, when your realization of that special divine place in you becomes total, you are cured immediately and you understand immediately. Otherwise, it's not faith, it's a business. But with unconditional faith, nothing is difficult. Faith is down there in our hearts. All the impediments go away when you have that. Faith is what is recommended for us. Answer our questions. That is what is meant when Lord Krishna says, with complete trust in me, get up and fight to achieve. Get up and fight to achieve that harmony. Having the mind be in its proper place and our heart be in its proper place. Us seeing the world through our heart space with complete trust in me. Get up and fight to achieve that understanding. You have to fight to experience the peace. Or struggle, or work at it, or have an intention. Have an intention. This is what I'm going to do. You could call it a fight, or you could just call it a resolve. You have to be resolved to find your peace. Until then, wherever you go, the war will follow you. Your karma is like your shadow. You can't escape it. Tails around with you. The minds of some people aren't clean. So we can look at this as having unclean minds. Our mind got sort of dirtied up. It's impossible to have good faith with an impure mind. Impure mind. Faith lives only in a totally clean mind. Otherwise, the seed is sown in a field where it won't grow. What's wrong with the field? Doubt. Doubt. That wonderful mental thing that comes up. Doubt. Doubts nullify faith. Even a little doubt is enough to destroy faith. One must develop faith without room for doubt. Even a little doubt is enough to ruin you totally. Doubt. That's what Lord Krishna says.
Can we have a total clean mind?
Of course.
I mean, you know,
When we're asleep.
yes, I think that's the only time. And the reason why I say that is because we are so much influenced by the outside. We grow up in that environment. It molds our way of thinking, and the struggle is there to get a clean mind, a total clean mind. I see it impossible, but it could exist, but let's say it's hard. And not to say impossible because, not that it's impossible, but say hard.
So for you, a clean mind is either impossible or hard.
Or maybe I am thinking intellectually again, which is not the right thing to do.
I got it. Maybe intellectually is not the proper way to get in touch with having a clean mind.
Right.
Perhaps on our spiritual path, there's two steps. If we're unwilling to admit the possibility of having a totally clean mind, even though the scripture says it's possible, our minds don't like that. Okay?
So
I've got a great man. That's my doubt. Yeah. Well, I have doubt, so I have doubt. I'm going to live with it. However, are you willing to resolve and be committed to clean your mind? Are you resolved and committed to clean your mind? The scriptures say that if you make that resolution and are resolved, and don't let your mind dissuade you from that, one day you will have a clean mind. The scripture reassures us. But we don't have to worry about that right now. If we think our minds are unclean, we just need to be resolved and committed. And we need to close now because...
Yeah. Okay.
So we're gonna close with a little Om. And why do we close with an Om? Why do we
Sound of
close with an pardon?
To calm
Yeah, to let
the
go of the thoughts and bring in peace.
Yes.
to calm the active energy.
To calm and to take the energy from our minds and intellects down into our heart where the truth lies. That's what our Om can do. So let's see if that works. Let's start with 3 conscious breaths. And with a deep in breath. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And go in peace, my friends.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.